What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.
Welcome to the Orange is the New Black podcast. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, joined by my co-host, Zim. Zim, say what's up.
What's going on, world? How y'all doing? Beautiful people. We just wrapping up a game not too long ago where we took a loss to the Cleveland Browns. Unfortunate game. Ace, you got any initial thoughts coming off of the near? I feel like they fought to the end, but you got any good, bad thoughts initially? What are your thoughts?
Definitely, I feel like they fought to the end for sure. It was one of those games where if you're paying attention in the AFC, everything is still in flux until week 18. So I'm pretty sure the NFL is happy that that's going on, right? Because you got more viewers watching. But as we got into the meat and potatoes of this game, it didn't really get interesting until the Texans against the Titans started to catch back up. That was when I was like, all right, let's see what we can do here. Let's see what we can make happen, because we see that going on. We see Jacksonville pulling the upset against the Colts, which I don't think anybody saw today coming. They were up by multiple scores. And then you start to see the Steelers get into that picture. So for me personally, I know there was a lot of people that want either the Patriots or whoever, the Colts. I wanted to play the Steelers. I ain't gonna lie. I would have loved to have gotten that.
Oh my God!
And ran through the Steelers like one last time just to let Ben know, like, especially after what happened in 2015. That would have been the ideal scenario. But obviously, we dropped this one. But the one thing that I'll say is the other part about this game, it kind of had for me a preseason feel, because you got to look at some of the end of this roster. And honestly, I felt like we got a good look at guys that we probably wouldn't have seen much from when it comes to the Trevion Williams of the world, when it comes to the Trevion Hendersons of the world, right? We got to see those guys playing this game. Noah Spence, Chris Evans. These were games where we got to see those guys. Trent Taylor, some of the guys that we just have behind those guys. For them to be able to stick in this game with the Cleveland team that had all of their starters in. When you look at that offensive line that the Cleveland Browns had, when you look at the skill positions, those were all of their starters on offense and on defense. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney. For them to only barely lose this game, I think says that this team is definitely talented. It says a lot about what they have when you're in a game where after Uno gets the record, they take him out. T. Higgins is in street clothes. Tyler Boyd doesn't take one snap. He's over chilling on the sideline.
Literally, I wanted him to play. I'm so sorry. I wanted Tyler Boyd to get 172 yards. I'm so sorry. Like I was like, man, too. That was just some weird, like I just wanted 3,000-4,000. But it, like you were just saying when we were on our Twitter space just now, like say you go get a championship, none of this stuff matters.
Right. Facts. Yeah. Like they said, like, oh, well, the Browns are gonna talk about, oh, we swept you last year. Like, they didn't even really care about this game for real. Like, those were like $5 and $10 tickets at the games. Browns fans weren't even at the game. So, like we just said, if they want to brag about that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, this was a team with the Browns that were supposed to go to the Super Bowl in the preseason, and they're out here winning 8 and 9. They came at me when they won 12 games, and I said that they would win 10. They didn't even do that. They won 8 games this season. So for me, like, yeah, that's cool and all, but really what this is about is staying healthy. That's what the Bengals were able to do in this game, because as we saw, there were a lot of players that went down with injuries. Josh Tupou, that could be an important one, right, when we talk about run defense and things like that. And then Mike Hilton scared us for a second, but he seemed to be okay.
How about Mike Daniels? I thought he was about to say
Mike Daniels went ham in this game, bro. Like, Mike Daniels was playing like a man on a mission.
Now, Josh Tupou going down, I think, is the big one that everybody needs to keep an eye on, because in run defense and everything like that, I just love the fact that that's another big body that's played he's been active every single game, played really, really good. Mike Daniels stepping up. Maybe now Mike Daniels for the playoffs goes for a run, because not looking favorable. As soon as Josh Tupou went down, I don't know if this has something to do with just resting starters, but as soon as he had a knee injury, them ruling him out is never a good sign as soon as it happens. I don't know if that's just because they wanted to make sure that their starters didn't go down.
No, facts. And like you said, Josh Tupou, that's something that we need to watch out for. When you talk about, I like some of the stuff that I saw from Marcus Bailey today. Like, we got to see a lot of the roster. Trey Waynes, Trey Flowers, we got to see those guys. And I believe there was also the young corner that we picked up that used to be on the Texans and on the Bucks,
Hargraves.
Hargraves. I think he's okay too. He went down a couple of times, but the story and the spaces that we were just in was kind of about, should the Bengals have played their starters in this game? To me, no, because the Titans ended up winning anyway. So it didn't matter whatever we would have done, even if we won that game, right? Essentially, for the most part, we wouldn't have been the second seed. So, like, for me, I actually am happy that the Steelers are getting into the playoffs. And somebody's going to say, oh, well, I don't want to play the same team 3 times in a row. I want the smoke.
I would not mind that one bit.
So I actually like the way that things are following along, because I actually felt like the Colts were a better team than the Steelers, right? So that's just an easier team in this race where the Bengals could take advantage of it. And obviously, like, I'm not too afraid of the Patriots either. I think, like, the Bengals are a team right now that everyone doesn't want to face. I think we need to be that team that nobody wants to see at all. Go ahead.
I think if the Bengals come out, this is very, very key. If the Bengals come out first, like this first game, like, I've been on record before the season, any point in the season, I say if Joe Burrow goes to the playoffs, I'm gonna show y'all the difference between Andy Dalton and Joe Burrow. And it's just a mentality thing, and it's about, like, who you go against sometimes. But when you have an elite quarterback, I just watch a lot of football. The first round is generally who has the better quarterback, and that's generally how regular season football games go. So I feel really, really strong that Joe Burrow is going to go crazy. But this is very important. The Bengals have to come out in this first game of the playoffs and absolutely just go off. And I think it's very important that they do, unless the game plan, like, say you were to play like the Colts are out now, but say a predominantly run team that can't put up points with you, then you control the clock, go up a couple scores and do what you did to the Broncos, something like that, right? But in all these other scenarios, you want to take away other teams' hope and will. And I just think that early on, I just want them to just come smoking out the gates. And I think what it would do is set them up for a playoff run where later on teams are now saying, we got to take chances to go against the Bengals. We got to go for it on fourth down and put them in some bad, uncomfortable situations because they're fearful that we're going to score 35 points. And a lot of teams that are going into the playoffs, with the exception of maybe the Chargers or the Raiders, and I think Raiders struggle with this a lot of times, there aren't that many teams that are just scoring, blowing the doors off of people. I think now Bills, to me, emerges like maybe the number one opposition that we probably haven't played in a while, or we haven't seen, or one of the teams that I think can keep up with us firepower, as well as the Chiefs, of course, because the Chiefs got a chance to see us. All the other teams, to me, I think are going to have to take chances, and it's not going to work out well for them, because I think our defense, playing the Browns with our backups today, I think made a statement to say that you can't just blow the doors off of us. Even our depth is going to hold up pretty well. And I thought that was really, really important that the Bengals didn't get blown out today. Because when it was looking ugly at first, I said, man, I just don't like this going into the first round. And that was my only argument to playing let's play starters. Earlier you said that. Now, you did just come on the Spaces and give me a convincing argument. Say any one of our guys go down, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. So that's a chance that I can't take. So that right there, your argument 100% sold me over. And I'm like, yeah, I think I just have some of these things because the type of guy I am, I'm combating with these people online all day about stats and numbers and things that really don't matter. If you go get a championship, none of that stuff ever matters. So I thought that was very key that the Bengals did work, and Mike Daniels in some of the depth. And when we say depth, think about Trey Waynes had some good breakups today. He had some good tackling. I thought that 44 Clay Johnson, he showed that he could step up if he had to. He kind of reminded me of Bocce. He was going sideline to sideline, shedding blocks. I feel really good about the linebacker depth. That doesn't mean that you're going to go to playoffs and Travis Kelce's of the world won't shred up your linebackers, because it is what it is. But I think the Bengals we learned all season who we are. And if we don't make mistakes, we'll always be in a game. Because today, there were no mistakes made. They made the mistakes on their side. And when we did make mistakes with Brandon Allen would delay a games and stuff, that's the difference between 3 points and 7 points. It's nothing that the Browns did, right? So taking that moving forward, I think psychologically that does a lot for the players too. And think about Trent Taylor, just fielding punts. Feel how comfortable we are just now fielding punts. Think about Chris Evans now. Do they have a conversation and say, hey, look, Chris Evans coming out of the flat, Uzama's leaking out, is now like something that we need to really be looking at. If you look at Chris Evans in the 2 games that he played, he leads both those games with 2 touchdowns. He runs a total of 77 yards and averages 4.5 yards a carry. You mean to tell me that you think that like this guy can't contribute to this team? Like, I know it's kind of crazy, but I just think like, man, on a playoff roster, him spilling out a backfield, going against like some of these linebackers, like some of these same teams that I'm saying can score a lot, they don't defend running backs in the flats well. Bills don't do it really well, and Bills can't run the football well, but I see them as a threat because they can match us points on a scoreboard. If they get down, I think he makes mistakes too. I think I'm thinking far ahead, but still.
Right. No, I mean, we went into this game, like you said, too, not only with, our backups in, you got completely out of, once Jamar Chase goes out there, sets the record, breaks Ocho's record. Congratulations to Chase on that for sure. And then it was a point where they kind of thought about going for the ultimate record, right? He almost tried to go for that as well. Obviously, I mean, the way that Chase has played, I wouldn't put it past him that he's going to have that record one day, right? But the thing for me is them not having an Oitnb, right? Like, Oitnb's not out there. Like, them going out there with Trenton Irwin, Trent Taylor, Mike Thomas, and still being able to move the ball offensively, like, we still felt at the end of the game that they could have won that game. And literally, they're like a onside kick, tap this way or that way from literally kind of coming back to win that game. So I was kind of honestly proud of the way that they performed. And I think that this team going into the playoffs is going to be just fine. Because I also said on that Spaces, and they said, and I kind of stole this from the broadcast, because they said, Joe Burrow told Zach Taylor not only was the physical rest important, but so was the mental rest. Like Joey B, when he was on the bye week, he said, what did he say he did? He said he didn't go anywhere. You know what he did? He watched football all day. You know what Joe Burrow's doing right now? He's watching every single team right now that we could potentially play in the playoffs.
When you said that point too, one thing that sparked in my head too is that I think that is so advantageous to us that these teams that are scraping to get into the playoffs or scraping and fighting and burning themselves down with their starters, like you come in there and you got one last corner and you got to go against the Migos, or you got one corner that's maybe got a bum toe because of all the games that are going on today, that's a checkpoint for the Bengals, because you better be at all cylinders, like especially from their secondary. That's the number one thing. The other thing too, I think, is that some of these pass rushers, like if we were to see a Raiders, a Max Crosby is about to get work today. So by the time he comes to play, it's like, I think that's one thing that does, after you said that, I say, you know what? They are wearing down some of these guys, because I will tell you this, like somebody else said on the Spaces, I thought it was very, very, it hurt me to see Isaiah Prince play the way that he did, Adeniji go down with a brief injury, and just them not playing well early in that game. And I think later on they kind of cleaned it up a little bit. But to see that and know that those are your starting right tackles and your starting right guard, and you got to go against maybe like a Max Crosby or some of the elite pass rushers, that's another reason why I think I like the Patriots too. It's like, we've gone against, like, people look at the 51 sacks and they don't look at like, who did we play? We played both Bosa's, both
Miles. We played everybody.
We played any elite rusher, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. We played them all. And every single game we came out of that joint where they got their couple sacks, so they got a sack or two, or in Max Crosby case, he got none. But we came out of those games unscathed, and we actually dominated most of those games where teams were more dependent on their pass rush. And I think those are the two things that you got to be looking at as a Bengals fan, is that Fred Johnson did play, did he? And he didn't look really good in the little bit of action I saw. is that the offensive line is now, now here comes Panay versus Jamar Chase argument all over again. Because what does Joe B need in the playoffs? He needs time to do his thing and let him cook. If he has that, there's no way to stop him. And then it's also the turnovers. Can you manage a football game without turning the ball over? Can you do this stuff without creating things on your own? And I thought the guy that we were just in the spaces was completely off to say that Zach Taylor failed them in this game or by any stretch. I don't think coaching decisions weren't there to be had. Like early in this game, like we see on all Bengals games, defense gets hit, they come back, make adjustments, and they play pretty damn well. They went against the starting unit for the Cleveland Browns, and they look pretty damn good. I mean, with the exception of Baker Mayfield, right? But I mean, aside from that, I thought they looked pretty well, like on in the second half of that football, much like we do now in the playoffs. I don't like that. You can't go into play Buffalo and think that you could go down 14, 17, 21 points and Josh Allen isn't going to keep on throwing or whoever. And that's why people are saying you went to Pacers. Yeah, because when it comes to firepower, they're not putting up points with us. Unless it's mistakes on our end.
Facts. I mean, I think right now the way that this AFC is shaping up, the way I think my man John was talking about the Chiefs, Travis Kelce, and some of their guys being banged up. The way that this is falling is just honestly so perfect to the Bengals. Because I would love to have New England in the first round, and I'll tell you why. Number one, it's not at Foxborough. Number two, Tom Brady is not walking through that door. Mac Jones is not Tom Brady. We're not gonna go there. He's not Tom Brady. And then number three, I would love the confidence that gives this team, right? They just came off of a win against the Chiefs. If you beat Bill Belichick in the first round, you've got to feel like, even from a staff confidence standpoint, Zach and those guys are going to feel like we can beat anybody. And rightfully they should. I think that the Bengals are the team to beat. A lot of people are going to say you guys are saying that because you're Bengals homers. No, it's just because when you look at this team from top end to bottom, when you talk about the defense and how good it's going, it's really been underrated because a lot of people just look at the stats. They don't look at how often the defense was out on the field in comparison to the offense when they were struggling early on, right? You talk about the defensive line. The Bengals have one of the top edge rushing tandems and just units in the NFL. You talk about you have to run the football in the playoffs, right? Well, we can do that. Not only can we do that, we can do it well. We can also, guess what? We can stop the run, something that teams like to do in the playoffs as well. Then you know what? We're not just going to be one-dimensional. If we do have to switch it up and start passing, we can drop bombs on your head, and Joey B is playing at a high level right now. It's honestly, this team right now, things are clicking on all cylinders. No injuries. They're healthy right now. That's why it was so important to me. Forget this Browns game. The Browns are at home going to be watching this game next week, and they're going to be watching us win in the jungle. I feel like that's what it is. I feel like this team is making a run, and I'm going to be so glad that the narrative of just this whole playoff win after 30 years is going to be over. Like, it's going to be over like that, and it's not even going to matter to these guys. Just like it didn't matter when Jamar Chase went out there and got the record. Just like it didn't matter last week when Joe Burrow went out there and got Andy Dalton's touchdown record, passing record.
It doesn't matter.
It's nothing. This is a new day. This is a new era.
And for and I thank you for that, because honestly, I think I was getting too engulfed in like looking at proving a point to people. The only point to prove is winning games in the playoffs. And it's so simple too, that if you look at any of those games, somebody was just, because January 9th is a day that it reminds me of when we lost to the Jets. And of course, when we lost to the Steelers. So I started off this day on a bad, I just think about some of that stuff and I get real upset. And it's my wife's birthday, but I get happy off that, right? But at the same time, some of those things that happen in those instances are like Marvin Lewis making these guys play so tight in those moments. Chad, they rest the starters in that Jets game, I think, and then they come back the next week and then the Jets win. And they had no business losing that game. Then when we start looking like some of these other games, I just look at even Baker Mayfield last year. Just having a competent quarterback that's a gamer in the playoffs is the only reason you don't have a playoff game. It has nothing to do about a curse or anything, as much as y'all love Andy Dalton, because I know we got Facebook on here tonight, as much as y'all love Andy Dalton, he's not a bad quarterback, but run me them numbers from them playoffs games. Run me them.
They are horrible.
They are the worst numbers you will ever see in those 4 games. Then compare that to Baker Mayfield, who we know now, we have the hindsight of knowing this. Dalton at his peak is better than Baker Mayfield, right? But Baker Mayfield played a clean game, a pretty good game against a bad Steelers game last year. And this is not to just tear down Andy Dalton. I don't want this to be whatever. But in those 4 games, he was so terrible. And that's the only reason you don't have a playoff game. Is that simple. There are some coaching things that happen in some of these games, whatever. But if your quarterback can't throw for 200 yards, your quarterback can't throw a touchdown or 2 with that offensive line that we had,
right?
That's your problem right there. It was sitting there all the time.
Quarterback should never throw for 150 yards in the playoffs.
And me and Ace were coming in here all the time, and I'm like, yeah, you could win maybe with Andy if you go get your Myles Garrett. You go. It's so many variables that had to make that thing happen so that you could kind of create your own version of what's the Gruden Buccaneers team that goes and wins the championship, where you really the Brad Johnson, where you really don't need a quarterback to really do anything. Like you just let your defense carry. Like, do you know how hard that is and what a unicorn that is? And it's
in this era, especially with the passing era, this is not the same. This is not the same in the NFL anymore. You can't do that anymore.
It's impossible. Take it to the next step when Baker goes to the second round of that game, right? Like last year. I just think it's a perfect. If you really want to see how games are won in the playoffs, it's the quarterback. The second round of that game, Chad Henne comes in, Pat Mahomes go out. Baker Mayfield is unable to go win and take his team to the next thing, to the next game. Whereas in the first round, he was able to do it. But the Chiefs practically were handing Baker the game, and he couldn't do it. And those are the 2 instances. And it wasn't, and their team was ready. Their team was ready to go at AFC Championship. That window closed so fast on them, just like that. Because now who opened it up? The Bengals opened it wide open. You get a quarterback that's competent, that's not scared, that's going to play. Look at Carson Wentz play today. Imagine him going to the playoffs with that. Like, their team was good enough to win a game, but if your quarterback plays like that, you can't. And you go look
remember what I said about him? About Carson Wentz? I was like, I want Carson Wentz.
And see, and a couple of weeks ago, I was like, man, Carson. And I went back and I looked, I said, man, he's just been managing a bunch of games. And then the one game that I looked at, he looked like complete trash. I said, oh, no, they suck. And a lot of times it's going to come down to that. Say that Belichick had a time. I think a lot of people probably saying, Ace, why would you want to play the Patriots? Say the Patriots had a Tom Brady. Say the Patriots had like elite pass rushers and all these other different things like that around the field. Yeah, I'll probably be saying, hell no, I don't want to play the Patriots. But the Patriots really are coaching right now with lack of talent because they overachieved in my mind. And they're probably 1 year away from adding things around Mac Jones. Maybe Patriots come back and they like just blitz the AFC next year and go crazy because Belichick is just a mastermind at that, right? But for this season, at this moment, right now, they cannot compete with us like on any way. The only way that they could beat us is if we have unforced errors. And a lot of teams, you would say that about every team except maybe the Chiefs and maybe the Bills. And right now, the Bengals, as we're recording this, the Bengals are still in the 3 seed with Bills up 10 and the Patriots down 10, I think. Bengals are still in the 3 seed. So it's a crazy postseason. But no, I was just saying, Colt, I was giving y'all, I see people saying Colts are none. I was just saying that's a team, like, if they would have gone to the playoffs, like, that's what would have happened to them.
What is the interesting thing? Before, I guess, last year, before Zach's first year, the last time the Patriots were in the Natty, you remember that game when Pac-Man ends up picking off Brady at the end of the game in PBS? I'm just saying, it's a big difference when you have to play them, I think, at home versus in Gillette Stadium. Like, Gillette Stadium, I feel like, is a whole other beast when it comes to having to play them there. But, yeah, I'm ready to take on any team, bro. But we're going to be respectful to you with your time, with you having to slide out with your wife. Before we get up out of here, I want to talk to you guys about the sauce.
What about that hoodie real quick? What's that you're
wearing?
Midwest
Best Barbecue.
Oh, barbecue.
And we got the Migos. We got the playoffs edition, man. We just dropped this. The Trace Amigos playoff edition. We're doing it for the culture. We rocking those right now. And then we also got the Zim Houday tees as well. So you can get the Migos joints at newstripecity.com. And then we got Zim, you just dropped the skeleton joints. That's the Kings of the North. There can only be one.
There can only be one.
There can only be one. So you guys can get those at zimhouday.com. And then we have potentially we got like a collab coming.
We got some stuff coming.
Both of us coming. So
especially for fans of the Orange is the New Black. Like especially fans of that. Me and Ace are now going to combine forces, and we're going to get this thing like something crazy. I think it's a great way to represent us. At the same time, like we're going to offer you a design that you could wear anywhere in the world. I'm so sorry to cut off the Midwest Best Barbecue, because right now they're doing a white chili thing that I haven't had a chance to taste it. We're going to be in the Natty next week for the football game, for the playoff game. So we're going to make sure we taste that. But one of my boys hit me and said, bro, the chili is fire. So if you're in Loveland or anywhere near Loveland, please make sure you go to Midwest Best Barbecue. It's going to be fire. Their food, we already know G-Funk Wings is fire. On the low, their sweet tea and lemonade is probably the best in the city as well. So
that's the best in the city.
So
we pulling up. You already know we're gonna pull up over there. So Tim, get ready for us. I know you listening, bro. We on the way. You already know.
So I need everybody and their mom, everybody come to the game, man. Like we need this thing lit. I need a whole lot of orange. I need all orange in the building, because this game, like I told y'all before, you were always just one quarterback away from all of our ops selling you that 30-year. That's dead. We ending that next week. That's over. It's over.
So
record it.
It's the Joey B era. Record it. It is what it is.
It's on record.
Of course, we're gonna end this with a yes,
sir. Ski. Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.